Hello, folks. Welcome. Welcome to HCL's Unleash the Power of Nomad. I am wearing my Nomad shirt today, so I must be in the right place. I'm here today joined with Bob Silken, who's one of our developers on the team, and Bob's going to take you through the latest and greatest features of HCL Nomad. At the end of this presentation, there will be a 30-second survey, so please stick around and take that. And we do have a handout for you to take away with you. So, Bob, over to you.
Thanks, Tim. Hello, everybody. My name is Bob Silken. I am one of the HCL Nomad developers. I mostly work on the Nomad for web browsers team, but we are a joint team between the web browser, the iOS and Android applications, and we move around between the teams. So I will talk about all three platforms, and that will make more sense in a minute. I also have some of my colleagues monitoring the chat. So while you are in listen-only mode for this webinar, you may ask questions in the chat, and some of my colleagues will try to answer them, and we can call those out at the end and talk about them verbally at the end. So with that, let's move forward. So here's a brief agenda of what we're going to talk about today. When we do these webinars, there are often people who are across the spectrum on Nomad knowledge, from I don't know what Nomad is, what is it? I'm here to find out what it is, to I've been using it, I've been deploying, what's next, what's going to change, what can I do differently, and all those kind of things. So wherever you are on that spectrum, hopefully we have something that will appeal to you in the next 40 minutes or so. So what is Nomad? So the goal for Nomad is to be a client to run your Domino applications, but it's a client that you don't have to run a traditional Notes client install or upgrades or rollout or management of all those different things. It's pretty much just go someplace like a web page, go to a website, and it just runs straight from there. You'll see more of that on the next slide as far as the iOS and Android are, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But the goal is to make it as simple as possible. You're not really worried about the upgrades. That's going to be all managed for you and that kind of stuff. But as a bonus, you don't even have to get an extra license or anything to get HCL Nomad. If you're already on the CCB v12 license, you get Nomad and it's already included. You can just start using it just like you do your Notes clients. But the goal for Nomad is to run your Domino applications as is on new platforms. So instead of just being limited to your Notes client or iNotes or any of those kind of things, you can just run them as is in a web browser, being Chrome, Edge, or Firefox, the three that we currently support due to the technology that we're relying on, which is called WebAssembly, but those three browsers have that support in them. But we also run on Android and iOS, and these are run through applications that are installed from the applicable application store to then run on your device. But you're not managing that client. It's managed through the App Store, just like all the other client apps on the device. There is enterprise management if you need it to manage those apps and control the rollouts and other things like that. But you're not having to do the big schedule like Notes client rollout, upgrades, and that kind of stuff. So I mentioned that we run on the desktop and the three browsers, and so you just go to the browser and you just go to a web URL and you run the application. It just loads up and runs. When there are updates available, it pops up a little thing. It either does it automatically if you are just starting up and you're not actively running it, it automatically updates. Otherwise, it pops up and says, hey, we need to upgrade either now or on the next startup, it will upgrade. For the mobile devices, you can see the two QR codes that are there, and that is to go to the applicable store to get the application to run. But the goal, of course, is to be able to run your applications without having to modify them. Which brings me to our next slide as far as what applications can you run on Nomad. So let me start with the upper right-hand side. So if you want to think about it kind of in a nested scenario, we are similar to the HCL client for application access, or HCAA, where we're basically a subset of the basic client. So that means the Notes basic client, which is a subset of the standard client. And so you're going to get a lot of the functionality that you're used to and you use in your application. So we have add formulas, load a script, replication, all your execution control language, your ACL fields, your field level security and encryption, all that kind of stuff is going to work. And the goal is to not have any specific design modifications for your applications, but you may want to change your applications or update them or modify them, because running on a phone versus a tablet or a computer screen where you have a lot more real estate may be different. We've done some things to help you with that. There are some different ways to manage the frames that are in your application on the mobile device so that you can go through the frames and see them full screen on the phone, and that kind of stuff. But you may still want to look at that. And that will bring us to Restyle, which is something I will talk about later as well. The key things that aren't in there is we are, as you can see, the basic client. So the basic means we're not running anything Java. So we're not running any of the Java or the Java plugins, any of the X pages and the Notes client, anything X pages. There are limitations on how these applications can be interacting with the operating systems. And so if you're used to using OLE, and that has been a big sticking point for some customers, that is not there because we are sandboxed or isolated from the operating system. And so being able to run those kind of operations is not allowed. So those are the big things that aren't supported. We do document our limitations and things that don't in our formal documentation, which you will get a link to later. But those are the big things that people tend to ask about or run into. But of course, the goal is it just works. I just install Nomad, I'm up and running quickly, a matter of a minute or two, and I just open up my application and it's working just like it always has wherever I've used it before. So why would you want to use Nomad for web browsers? So it provides a lightweight Domino experience in your browser. You're not managing another client. You can switch browsers. You can go to different machines. You can run it. It runs on multiple operating systems, so at least Windows, Mac OS, or Linux. If the browser's there, it generally runs. You get the feel and look as if it's the same application running on a Notes client if you're running it on those platforms, but it feels more built in and everything else like that. The local replication offline still works. You can switch between user profiles in the browser. So if you want to have different users, you can, normally through the browser profiles for proper data isolation. And there are multiple things to migrate and manage through the PanAgenda Marvel client. So we have bundled with the PanAgenda Marvel client Essentials level, and that gives us many things that allow you to manage Notes INI kind of things, but also just migration and roaming, which we will see more demos of in a bit. What about Nomad on the mobile devices? So this is iOS or Android. You can use these on the go. So take your application, go wherever you are, do what you need to do, and you'll just do it on the phone, and you can come back later and see the same application on your web browser or whatever you want. Everybody seems to have a device, and this really allows you to extend the reach of your applications. But there are also some things that are specific to the mobile applications that we have done. So since it's a phone, it has integration with the GPS in the phone through the Lotus Script class Notes GPS. It is available in the web browser too, but of course your web browser is often sitting on your desk, whereas your mobile device is with you everywhere you go and that kind of thing. But we've also integrated with things in the operating system. So file import or file attach or any of those sharing things that you're used to in the mobile device that you choose to use. We use the camera where they support barcode and QR code scannings. We are integrated with the biometric authentication. So whether it be like a Touch ID, a fingerprint, a pattern, or a Face ID, those kind of things. And then other things that are enhanced for the traditional mobile experience where it's more touchscreen based than maybe your applications are used to being too. So hand drawing pictures or notes or those kind of things are all there. So it's your basic app, but with some mobile touches to make it feel more like a mobile application. When these applications are running, they are talking to a Domino server. Imagine that. And traditionally, when we first shipped, we were shipping with safe links to act as a proxy. There are communication needs to be able to handle from the web browser in particular. We can't talk nRPC directly to the server. So we have to have some proxy in there that allows us to take WebSocket secure communications, which we can use from the browser. So we basically take the nRPC, stuff it in a WSS packet, and then send it to a proxy that does that unwrapping so that the Domino server sees nRPC as it always has. And what that also means for you is any Domino servers that you're used to running, it's just going to look like another client that's running nRPC. So there's that. Some people did not like the experience of using SafeLinks, or struggled with the experience, or just didn't have any of the experience and didn't want to spend the time to go learn a new product, although it is a great product and it does a lot more than just proxy for Nomad Server. It's a full VPN and proxy and everything else, and it's a great HCL product for the right use cases. But for those people who just want to run on Domino, we have created the Nomad Server on Domino, which is a Domino add-in task that just runs on your Domino server and therefore is more inherently manageable by the Domino administrators. But here are some of the goals for the Nomad server that we have. And it was to make the SafeLinks as an optional component from our original deployments. And I'll show you an architecture picture in a moment here that will help you understand that better. But there are still reasons to use SafeLinks. If you want to use it as a reverse proxy, many of our customers already do. That part will work just fine. But for the simple deployments, this greatly reduces the complexity of having a different product. It also has fewer requirements. It doesn't require an LDAP server setup. That's how the SafeLink server was getting the Domino IDs and stuff, but because Nomad server is running on Domino, of course, it can just do a lookup and find the user and server integrations that you want. Because Nomad server is on Domino, it can integrate with Cert Manager for your TLS configuration. So it can see those, pick up your automatic renewals of your certificates and all of the great things that we have learned to love about Cert Manager. And if you were going to use federated login or SAML deployments, then you need a deploy NSF. That gets auto-generated for you now because it's sitting on Domino and has access to the information that you need to do that. So with that, here was what our architecture kind of looked like before. So we had the Nomad server. This is the one running as SafeLinks. And so we had our mobile devices coming into SafeLinks server, and it was doing a lot of different things. So if we look at the bottom left-hand corner, we see the SafeLinks administrator, which was used for setting it up, but you had to do some setup. You had to run through the configuration. You had to decide what you wanted to do, that kind of stuff. All doable, but somewhat complex if you're not used to it. It stored information in a relational database. So for session management and things, it would need a relational database. And there were multiple choices on what that relational database could be, but again, something else that you had to have. And you had to have your own key store to manage the keys that were happening there. In the end, it's talking NRPC, like I mentioned, it's taking the traffic that's coming from the mobile devices, be it NRPC or the WebSocket secure protocols, and turning it all into the NRPC to talk to the back end. And that was the predominant communication. When it had to do a lookup, it's using the Domino LDAP. So that's that another port and set up there for the Domino LDAP. And then if it's Nomad Web is hosting, the files have to be hosted somewhere since it's a web application. And so those are normally hosted on the Nomad server, that kind of stuff. So the big thing to take away from this is it works and it's somewhat elegant, but it has a lot of moving parts. So let's look at the next slide. So the next slide is when we're running Nomad server. And you can see that our chart has greatly been simplified. We still have the same communications coming in from the devices from the left, and now it's coming into it could be either the Nomad server that's sitting in the middle, or it can just be an HTTP proxy. It's just pure HTTP traffic, so you can have an HTTP proxy or a load balancer at that point. It can be SafeLinks. It doesn't have to be SafeLinks. It could be any HTTP proxy or load balancers that you already have in your environment that you're used to in your setups and everything else like that. And the Nomad server piece is moved over to the right inside the Domino domain. So you can have your Nomad server, which is running on a Domino server in your domain. It can be on any traditional thing. You can have it on all on one Domino server. You can have it on different Domino servers. They can be HA, they can be clustered, all that stuff. But the communication is a lot simpler. The traffic is coming all the way to the Nomad server on Domino. It's doing the NRPC to the other servers, which may be itself, that kind of stuff after that. So this is greatly helping to simplify the architecture for people, and hopefully this will appeal to you. So with that, let's see a quick demo here, and I'll show you that I'm running a Domino server, and I've downloaded the Nomad server on Domino package, and it's just a zip file. So all you have to do is unzip the file into your Domino directory. So that is what I've done here. I clicked on it. Let me pick my Domino directory, and I will just extract that into it. And at this point, once the unzip is complete, the installation is complete other than setting one configuration value. So we will go and we will set the one configuration value that we need. And this is mainly just so that when we are looking up things in the Cert Manager, that we know which certificate to pick if there are multiple site addresses and that kind of stuff, that's like that. But other than that, we set that one config and I do load Nomad, and Nomad is now running, and you can see that it's running right below the database server tasks that are there, and it's listening on the port 9443. So now I've opened up a browser and I've gone to my server, which is running the Nomad server, and you can see the sessions happening on the left. For test user 1 has their session running. I did have that recording fast forwarded, so it wasn't quite that fast, but it's roughly a minute at regular speed, and I'm running. So I can easily take the Nomad server, deploy it on a Domino server, set the one config value that we need, and hook up a client to it via web browser or iOS or Android, everything else like that. So it can be that simple now, and that was the goal with Nomad server. And we've been getting good positive feedback from customers who have now since deployed this. So it is available today. There's more documentation on that QR code. We'll have that in the handout at the end, so you don't have to worry about that if you want. Since 12.01 Fixback 1, so you have to have at least that Domino version. It could be on Windows or Linux, it doesn't matter. And we have that. We also have the 12.02 or DANU versions available now. And it does bundle HCL Nomad for web browsers, so it has a version of that in there. They can be updated independently from each other, but generally we will ship the Nomad server with every shipment of the Nomad for web browser, so they just stay in sync. And you can just do that same unzip. You just unzip right over the existing files, and you're good to go. And we saw all that. So with that, I'd like to say, okay, we're running now. So what can I do? What does my client do? So here are some demos regarding what the clients can do. So this one is going to show you just some basic functionality that you can use. So here we have a recent applications page. This is the web browser running. So we're going to open up the inventory manager application. And we will note that here in this view, we've got multiple tiles in here, and the available actions is actually displayed at the time on the right. This will be important when we switch to mobile. You'll notice that it can be quite different. So here we have a table, and we've sorted by the on-hand inventory to figure out how many jumping jacks we have, and we can look for that. We can also do quick search, so you can start typing, your find dialog pops up, you can type in more information, and now you can see we found model, of which there are 3 of them, and so we can go into there. You can also use the search bar. So you can open up the search bar using the toolbar, and then you can search for the dominoes, and there you can see that's it. So there are multiple ways to search, and whichever ones you're using in your applications, they should work as you're used to. For the sake of the demo here, we'll also go add a new client. So this is just a sample database, so it has a very simple form. So we're going to enter the Domino Toys as a Domino company, and they will be in Raleigh, North Carolina, which is near where I am, but it could be anywhere, of course. And so now we will have added a new client, and when we go back to the main dashboard, and we'll switch and see the view client list. And so now I see this view has been updated, and I have the new client in here. So let's say we switch over to the mobile device. And so here, we're going to try and run Nomad on an iOS device, and it's going to start by the Face ID. So we logged in with Face ID. We could have used any other of the biometric options, but that's what we had. And you saw that the recent applications was displayed slightly differently, as was the inventory manager application, because it is taking into account the fact that we're running on a different resolution device, in this case being a phone. But the same basic functionalities are there. We can still search, the document details are there, we can open them up, we can edit them. And in this case, we're going to edit this one, and we're going to add an image. So this is showing integration with the device. So we're using the camera here, and here is our nice kickball, nice and red, that we can add up to the details. We can also add the barcode for it. So if we want to look for the barcode information, we can use the built-in camera from the device. So we've long pressed, and then we hit the paste from image of barcode, and we found the barcode. And just like that, it read it right in here into this field. So now we've updated this document. Here's your execution security alert that shows you that we are running as a regular Notes application with all the security and confidentiality that you would expect to be there. So that is there, and now we have our kickball, and you can see that that action menu that we had before has been put down as a menu into the mobile device because of the real estate. So here we're making a new product order. The product order also has integration with the QR code and the barcode. So we're going to scan that same barcode to find it. And then we will pick one of our companies. And so we'll pick the Domino Toys company that we created at the beginning and save that. And then you can see here's the menu again, and we can go through and we can go back to the beginning, and we're back here at the beginning to look at the other thing, and you can see our kickball order, and now we've opened it up, you can see that it's there. So we have successfully managed to create the order. But that shows you a lot. We had the biometric auth at the beginning, integration with the camera, the barcode. The QR code looks very similar to the barcode. I didn't show that, but it is very similar to what's happening in there. So one of the new features that's coming in all three of the clients, so in Nomad for Android, iOS, and the web browsers shortly, is the capture signature feature that we have been working on. So in this case, we're going to show you the one that is working from a rich text light field. So on the left, you can see if you were in your Domino Designer, you could go in and you could now pick an input and limit it to be a signature on the left for the signature field for rich text light. So let me go ahead and show you that. So we've done that, and once we've done that, and when we open it up, we'll be able to go to our same inventory application. And when we look for one of the items to approve, so now we pick the orders awaiting approval. We see different orders that are sitting here. And when we open up one of those, we will now see the rich text light signature field. So clicked on it, put it in edit mode, and now you can see that there's a signature at the bottom, which has the pencil with the line going on. And so when we click that pencil, it will bring up the capture signature dialog. This is not electronic like key-based or security signature. This is just a written signature. So you have the option to draw, so you can click your finger, or if you were on a machine like a web browser that doesn't have a touchscreen, you would use your mouse or your touchpad or whatever else like that. You can also just type into it. So you saw there was another tab there where you could type into it and do that. So in this case, that image has been attached to that and it was approved. So it's no longer waiting for approval, and we have approved it with a signature. Similarly, there's the @ command, which can use for edit insert signature. So the syntax is on the left and everything else, but let me show you on the right what it's going to look like. So we're going to go into the same application and we're going to look for another order to approve. This time we're going to pick the Domino's, and we can see that it's a very similar form. And if we click sign and approve, it brings up the same capture signature field, but through the @ command this time. It's the same dialog. And like I said before, you're just drawing on the screen. So there's a clear button if you need to start over. If you click the type tab at the top, you could type it in and everything else. But again, we're just drawing it this time. So you can see the pretty signature here, and we're done. So there are multiple ways, and you can see that this one was set to 500 width. So it's a relatively wide image. If you needed a smaller image, you could control that using the parameters that you see on the left. But we'll approve that there. And we refresh, and now that order is gone because it has been approved. All right, so next I want to show you some printing and replication. So some processes still involve printing, so we'll let that go, and we will go look at a current client list. And so we'll just say that we need to print one of these companies. So we'll pick the Giant Toys company, just as a proof and example. It's a very basic form, so it's nothing fancy or anything else, but we can handle printing of a lot more complex forms and that kind of stuff that you're used to. In this case, I'm just going to print it as a PDF. I'm not going to actually send it to the printer since you can't see my printer. So I will print it as a PDF. I just save it, and I get to pick what I call it. So this is the Giant Toys Company, and I've saved that PDF, and now I will open up that PDF just to show you that it looks what it looks like. And you can see that it looks just like the form did. So very nice and handy to use. So if you are somebody who's been looking for print, it is now available in the Nomad for web browsers. This is not available in the iOS or Android applications. But we also have replication. So we have the make available offline, which is the menu you're used to from the Notes client. We have simplified the dialog a little bit and also made it look more like a web form in that sense. But the functionality is going to be the same. So we picked it. It has kicked off the replication in the background. I can then switch to the replication tab, and there you go. And you can see that the application is there, and it's the classic replication that you're used to seeing. Two of the things that I would like to show you are related to the Panagenda Marvel client. So this is included and are different features that you can use to handle your user's experience. So the first one here is the web migration. I'll get it started. So this will be, I'm running in my Notes client, and my workspace looks like what you see here. So I've got the 7 on the first row and the 6 on the second row, and you can see the different icons and everything else. And now I'm going to take this same user who's been using the Notes client, and I'm going to go over here to the web browser and start it up. So this will run through the setup. I'm going to actually skip through some of this for you. And then the last few steps are the Panagenda Marvel client, and there are 3 different steps, and it ran through them as quickly as you could see. So you can see that we have the recent application. So we were looking at the workspace in the Notes client, but they are added to the recent applications, which comes to the Notes client, but they are also added to the workspace. So you can get to the workspace in the Nomad for Web Browsers client, and here they are again. So the same applications, 7 on the first row, 6 on the second row, and they are all here. So this is what we have called web migration. So this is migrating from the Notes client to the web browser. This is a one-time thing. The first time you run the Nomad for web browsers, it'll do this. After that, they're separate. They're not necessarily updating each other and moving back and forth. However, some people would like to do that. So then we have what we call Nomad client roaming. So this is when I'm using different Nomad clients and going back and forth between them. I would like for them to be kept up to date between the two. So for example, I've set up the Nomad for web browsers, and I've got these 12 recent applications here, and now I'm going to run the mobile device. So let's start this one. So I'm going to launch the iOS phone client here again, and I'm going to quickly do the configuration here. I'll let this run since it's already been sped up for you. And it logs in, and it will go through the same setup steps that we saw over in the web browsers, and the last one will be the Panagenda Marvel client. And here it is, the same applications, they're in the same order. You'll notice that the orientation, of course, is different because the phone only has room for 2 at a time, so they've been relayed out, but they're in the same order. You can open up the applications and you can see them. And so here's the inventory application that we were looking at previously that is still here. And that, so, but this is meant to keep your Nomad clients roaming back and forth. So if you were to add an application on one, the next time you launch the other one, it'll be over there and vice versa. So these are more continual updates and following as we go. So now I'd like to talk about what is Domino Restyle. And I'm not going to demo this for you, just to show you and talk to it, because this could be its own session all by itself. So I just want to talk to it briefly. But the goal is to provide a way to easily update the visual styling of existing Domino applications. So this is along the lines of, hey, take my application and make it look more modern or prettier or better and those kind of things. So we've taken the discussion team room database over here on the left and restyled it, and now it looks like over on the right. And I'll talk a little bit more about the options that are there and stuff here in a minute. The restyled application is a change to the application itself. So it doesn't matter which client you're looking at it, whether it's one of the Nomad clients or the Notes client, they can all display the application after it's been restyled. But the goal is to make it low risk. So it is just a visual restyling of your application. It is not affecting the logic or the content of your application. We're not trying to go into the logic of the application because that's a very fraught with danger kind of thing. So it's just a visual change, everything else. Restyle has options. So not everybody has designer skills and wants to go in and be able to pick all these things. So we have given you a set of options to pick, and then you can do that and you can play with your application, restyle it, and hopefully those guidance will lead you to a much better application. And it's fast. It's not something that's going to take a long time to run. It normally takes less than a minute or so, depending on your application, but we're talking about the order of minutes rather than hours to go through and everything else like that. The guiding principles, like I briefly alluded to before, are just don't break my application. It's a visual restyling. Don't affect the business logic. Don't touch any of my Notes formula, Lotus script, agents, JavaScript, any of that stuff. Don't touch those things. And don't change my content. There are some options that allow you to. So if you're using color and images to be indicative of certain things and you really need those to say, you can keep those. But otherwise, if the color is just the color that it happened to be at the time when the application was signed, then you can do that. And don't make me think too hard. So don't give me a million options and make me pick, give me different themes and let me pick through some of those things. So here are some of the components that do get restyled, and we are continually adding to this list. So you can see that we can restyle views, forms, subforms, pages, action bars, embedded outlines, frame sets, the navigators, and the default folders. We're still working on field components and other aspects. In this case, there are different themes that you can pick, and the one on the right, you can see it's got like a dark theme. So the panel on the left has been changed to have call management on the top, but it's a dark color with a light text. You can pick it to match more of the color on the right, where it's a whitish background or a lighter background with darker text. You can pick different colors. So instead of the purple, if you don't like the purple, you can pick any of those colors. You can change other things associated with the application as well. But you have all these choices, but you also have guidance and everything else like that. And like I said, there's very complex, and we're going to have a style guide and other documentation around restyle, and there can be a whole other presentation on about it. But I just wanted to make you aware that we are trying to give you the tools to make your applications look new and fresh in a simpler way than having to go through Designer and do a full application rebuild, which you probably don't want to do. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Tim Clark to talk you through the next section.
Thanks, Bob. It helps if I'm not muted.
Correct.
If you can go to the next slide. I just wanted to bring up, I'm the product manager for Nomad, so I just wanted to bring up a couple of use cases that we've seen that have been really impressive to us as to how people have taken Nomad and are using that in the real world. The first one I want to cover is just as you see on screen there. It's a really large US-based cleaning company that does a bunch of cleaning contracts around some massive plants in and around the USA. They have cleaning schedules that go out across all of the different plants, and they run out for years in advance. I mean, massively, 3 to 4 years out in advance. They have to work out when they're going to be cleaning each piece of equipment in and across the plant and know who's going to be doing that and where they're going to be. They tried for about 2 years apparently to move this application onto something else, and they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to make that move. And eventually, when they saw Nomad and saw that we could do it on a mobile and then it was going to be quite simple, they decided to stop that migration effort and come back to Nomad, and now they deliver that application to all of their roaming employees across their sites across the whole of the US, and all of that stuff is done in a Notes app centrally, and then all the end users, as it were, get to use that in Nomad on their mobile devices. And that works brilliantly for them. And they are now able to keep up with their customers' demands about what they need cleaning or what they need checking across their manufacturing sites and plants all the time. So that was the first example that we thought was really impressive about how they've taken a simple notes app that they've tried to do something else with and then seen the value of Nomad on mobile devices. The next one is a manufacturing company in Europe. They've got a huge number of users and they were ready to move away because they thought Nomad was going to be difficult because they'd seen SafeLinks and they didn't have the skills to be able to put all of that stuff in place around it. But they came to one of our Domino jams and saw that we were doing Nomad for Domino servers, so the Nomad server itself on Domino. And once they'd seen that simplification of the architecture, they decided to stick around and give Nomad Web a chance. And they are now back building their applications, pushing this stuff out to their users, and making sure that their users have the right information where they need to be. They don't have the Notes client deployment issues that they used to suffer. They now just use Nomad Web and move forward with that. So they've simplified their architecture and their deployment, and now they're going on and making sure that they can use all of this stuff natively in the browser and making sure their users are employed gainfully across their plants. So what would you use Nomad for? Maybe you can tell us in the chat. I can't see the chat at the minute, but I'm sure we'd love to see your examples. So if you are using Nomad, I want to challenge you to put in the chat right now what you're using Nomad for. If you're not using Nomad at the minute, I want you to tell us what you would use it for. Okay, I'd really love to see that when we look at the analysis of the chat later on. So that would be really helpful if you could do that for us. Bob, could you take me to the next slide? So I, as a product manager, want to tell you about what's coming up next. I'm sure some of you that are here are all looking at it and going like, this is great. We know all of this. We've got it. We want to use what's next. So as Bob showed you, the Capture Signature is coming to Android in March, and that's going to roll into iOS as well. Just because we haven't put it underneath iOS doesn't mean it's not going to be there. And then later on in March, we've got Lotus script updates for the web version and some admin stuff, as well as the Capture Signature stuff. So the stuff that Bob showed you today is coming. You can't get it right now, but in March, you'll be able to get it. And then we do have a roadmap of stuff that we're not ready to share with you. I want to keep you on ice for that, but we do have a roadmap of stuff that we're going to bring out later in the year. Now you can see that we're doing regular updates, okay? So for the web browser version of this Nomad Web, we do quarterly updates. So the next one you can expect to see in June. And then for the Android and the iOS versions, we do them monthly. So we push them out to the app stores, or for Android, you can get that as an APK, I think it is, from our FlexNet downloads, and you can deploy that through your own methods if you wish to. But know that the mobile teams do push out once a month, and the web team pushes out every 3 months, so once a quarter. That's a great look at what we've done and where we're going. Bob, let's give them some information about how they can get more information on this. So we want you all to take a screenshot of this slide, okay? You'll have some great information here that you can go and take away. You'll see that you can give us your ideas over there on the left-hand side. That's our AHA ideation portal. Be easy if I could say it. And that allows you to tell us what you want to come next in Nomad. I know that Thomas, who's one of our product managers, who's also on the call, and I always go through AHA every morning at the moment because we're in Europe, and the Americans wake up in the afternoon and we all get together and do our meetings in the afternoon. But Thomas and I spend a lot of our time going through all of the ideas that come into AHA, and we see some fantastic stuff coming in, and it all comes from you. So without you guys actually telling us what you want, we couldn't do that. And it's really interesting to see the stuff you want us to do next. We then take that and then give that to people like Bob and Doug, who is also on the call, and these are the developers, and we talk through what we can do, what's coming next, what's important, what we should do now or next, and then we make up our lists of how we get to the next version. So you really do have a way in telling us what we should do next. And I know Bob gets entertained by the stuff that we see. We bring the good stuff to them. We also show them some of the really silly stuff that we see. We have a good giggle sometimes, but a lot of the time there's some really good serious stuff in there that we can take forward and make the next version of the product much better. So all of the documentation that you've seen that Bob's referenced is in the middle there. And then down at the bottom left, I want to point this out. This is the Solutions Academy. This is allowing you to learn about our products. This is our training center, if you like, and it's all virtual and it's all free. So go and sign into that, get yourself an account, and make sure that you're getting up to date with our latest training. Down on the bottom right hand corner, you can see the support forum. This is people like you helping each other, and our support analysts go there and help each other through the forums and make sure that everyone's getting answers to the questions that they have. And then last but not least, I've left the best till last. If you don't want to deploy this in your environment and you just want to try it out, do that. We want to give you that for free. It's up in the top right hand corner. You can go and create an account in the sandbox and you can try out Nomad for free. You can even upload your templates and try out your applications in the sandbox. What's even better is Domino Restyle is in there as well. So you can take your application, upload it into Nomad in the sandbox, and then restyle it and see what it's going to look like for you. So that's a zero investment for you, apart from your time. No infrastructure, no testing, no nothing. Just go in, sign up, get an account, and off you go. So I think that's really good value, that you can go and try this stuff out and see what Bob and Doug and others are creating and that we're pushing out for you to try. So that just leaves us to go and answer a few questions, Bob. So if you roll forward, I think we have a question slide, right? Excellent. So I'm going to invite Doug and Thomas to join us and take us through some of the questions that we've been getting that Bob and I have not seen. So this could be quite entertaining. I think we've got probably 10 minutes left, Bob, to answer questions. So Thomas and Doug, if you'd like to join us off mute, that would be great.
That is the off mute button. Thomas here.
Hello, Thomas.
We had, I think, about 100 questions, and one thing that came up.
For all of them.
No, maybe not. But one thing that came up a couple of times was the question on what about licensing? I mean, what license type is required in order to use Nomad? Can you elaborate on that?
Yes. Apart from I'm not a salesperson, so I don't know all of the license types. I believe it's the CCB license that gives you access to Nomad. And I believe CEO will as well if you have one of those licenses. It's included with your Domino licensing. And if you need further information on that, we can put you in contact with your sales rep or your local business partner to get more details on that. If they have questions, get them to come and ask us and we'll help them out.
Yeah, I think the key message which needs to be underlined really is that your current license may already provide you with the capability to run Nomad. You just have to use it.
Yeah, you just have to drop those files in like Bob showed you, and then you should be good. Oh, there you go. Thanks, Bob. Extra license, no extra license required, available with CCB in version 12. I believe that might be CEO as well, but we'll check with Catherine. Next question.
Doug, want to pick a more technical question?
Well, I also want to point out in general, there are a number of feature requests around both Nomad Web and mobile. We encourage you to vote on AHA, either find that feature or add the feature and kind of your use case. Us as a collective team actively go through those features and prioritize them into our backlog. So it's a great way to get that in front of us.
Okay, a couple of people had asked, I mean, you showed this in the demo, but I think we need to underline this once more. Is it possible to work offline in the browser?
Oh, Bob, I'm going to let you take that one.
So the answer is yes, we do support replication in 2 of the browsers. So the Chrome and Edge browsers support replication, and the Firefox does not, and that is a performance statement based on how the different browsers are handling the file system storage inside the browser's management of those files. And once you can replicate, then you can go offline and you have your local replicas just like you would in your Notes client or anything else like that. So in Nomad for web browsers, you can replicate what you want and operate offline, and then of course do replication when you come back online. In the inventory manager application that we had and we showed, we did have it set up. We didn't demo it in this case, but it's in there that there's a button to say, hey, work offline, just to manage it, and it automatically kicks off a replication in the background and then takes you offline. And then you can come back later and say, I'm back online, and it'll force the replication at that time too. So you can use it through commands and not necessarily through the replication page. And I will also add that replication and offline work is not special to Nomad for web browsers. It also works on iOS and Android.
That brings me to the next question. Is the inventory management application available for download?
It is currently only an internal application that we use for demos. We have not made it available to download. If you had a reason that you would like to have it publicly around, you could put that in the chat as far as what the reason would be, and we could consider doing something like that.
Yeah, I think if there is enough demand, we can make it available so that customers can use it in their environment for demo purposes as well. So if you like that idea,
we could
please.
put it up in the sandbox.
Absolutely, yes. I think you mentioned it, but Sandbox, there was a question, can we actually run our own Sandbox? Can we try it out? And I replied to that question in the chat that there is an existing Sandbox that we have put out for you. Maybe we need to put up that slide just so that everybody is aware of our Sandbox.
Yeah, so you can put your own applications into the Sandbox. You can do a new database and pick it from a local file system, NTF, for instance. So if you have a template of your application, you can put that up there. And then I'm not sure if you can copy and paste data into it, Bob.
You just upload the regular application and you can run and you can create documents in it and do everything else that you're used to doing in your regular client. So sure, brilliant. But you can have it populated with test data and sample data when you upload it as well.
Awesome. So there you go. You can test your application in the Sandbox and see if it works with Nomad or how it works with Nomad, because we know it will work. It's just how will it work?
Another more technical question. It's about confirmation whether Lotus Script events on forms, fields, and views all work just fine, or is there any problem? Just a question that someone had to make sure their existing applications are just working fine. Bob, can you confirm Lotus Script and the like just works fine?
Most of Lotus Script works. Like I mentioned earlier, if your Lotus Script is trying to do things like talk to the OLE or other objects or kick off a Java task or an agent or something, then that part's not going to work. But in general, the Lotus Script should work.
Okay, and the same question about outlines.
Yes, the outlines are completely supported.
Okay, easy answer. Let's pick that one. Does it also support voice recognition for login, like biometrics? To be honest, I don't know. Does any mobile device currently support voice recognition as a login method?
Not that
it's not something that I'm aware of.
Maybe the person in the chat can add a follow-up comment to that for us to help us understand that requirement.
Okay, then let's pick this one. Does Nomad for mobile need the same installation as Nomad Web on the server?
That is a yes and no answer. So it needs some proxy, either the SafeLinks proxy or the Nomad server on Domino, to be able to talk to the server over WebSocket secure protocol, which is all that the web browser does. So the web browser requires that the Nomad on iOS and Android do not be, but they can use the WebSocket secure through the same infrastructure. Both mobile clients also support direct NRPC connectivity. So as long as the ports are open and you can access the backend Domino servers from your mobile device, whether that requires a VPN or whatever network setup you want to have, they can talk direct NRPC to the backend server, so they do not have to use a proxy in the middle. But you can if you want to route all of your 3 Nomad clients through the same infrastructure from the outside.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Here, What about OLE objects? Obviously, this customer is leveraging a Domino application with embedded OLE objects. So will that work, or is there any problem?
A lot of the OLE is dealing with files in the operating system, which we don't have access to. So most of those OLE things are not going to work. There are alternatives, but they'll require application modification to try and manage the data, whether you attach it to a different form and manage the data and reattach it, or have the user take additional steps. There are options, but not direct OLE integration.
Okay, I hope that clearly answers the question. Another one is from a customer that has an ID vault configured to restrict the number of downloads of the number of times an ID file can be downloaded. And he was asking, is Nomad Web always downloading the ID file from the vault and in their environment, because the number of downloads is restricted? Is there any way to avoid the ID file download being done over and over again every time they clear the browser's cache? And I think that might be a not so simple answer.
The answer about getting the ID from the ID vault is required. So that part is true. And it is downloading it from the browser. The browser, each time the cache is cleared, will re-download the ID file. It's kept in the browser in the secure sandbox when it has it, but if you clear that, then of course we'll have to go get it again. I don't know about the management on the back end on what the options would be as far as allowing that a certain number of times or knowing that it's the same client or those kind of options. But I can confirm that we are using the ID vault and we are downloading the ID file when we need it.
Yeah. The follow-up question to that is, can the ID file be stored outside of the browser's cache?
No, we are sandboxed to protect security and things, so everything comes into the sandbox and stays in the sandbox. It doesn't go to the local ID file or provide a way for us to upload. We do not provide a way to upload it from the local operating system into the browser.
All right. Here is an interesting question to Bob and Doug combined. The question is, how did HCL do so much magic?
I would say that we did the magic of reusing what we have already had for many years. So we are based on the same Notes client base. So the Notes client that if you've been using it for years and years and years, it's the same code base. It's just parts of it have been compiled differently to run in the mobile device or to run in the web browser, container, and WebAssembly. So the magic is just being able to expose what we've already had before in a different way.
Releasing the power of what developers can do, I'd say. There is a follow-up comment saying, hey, we have a future again, it seems. Biggest thanks to HCL, yay. Thanks for that comment. We'll definitely forward that to all of the development team, and thanks for that. Tim, can you see the chat meanwhile? Can you
I can't.
chime in a bit?
However, I can see the time is running away with us. I think we have time for one more comment, because I know we have to do a 30-second survey at the end of this. So I think we have time for one more question, and then we'll get to the survey. So Dan, if you're ready with the survey, we'll take one more question, and then we'll get to that.
So let's pick this one as the last one. Can Nomad Web be installed on an existing server, or do you have to install a dedicated machine for that? This customer is running Domino Vault on one machine and is asking whether the Nomad server can be installed on the same machine.
The answer to that is yes. Of course, if the more stuff you put on a Domino server, the more performance impact you're going to have because you have different applications on there. But as long as the machine can handle the load, you can put the Nomad on there with the ID Vault and your regular application. You can run it all in one server if you want. It just depends on the load, just like any client that you're using.
I'd also recommend that customer upgrades to the latest version, which is called Domino Leap, rather than Vault. So hopefully they'll get some benefit out of going to the latest version of that as well. But yeah, you should be able to run it on all on one box. If you're not got masses of load, if you've not got thousands and thousands of users, you should be okay.
All right, and with that, Tim, I'd like to hand back over to you and conclude the Q&A, even though there are more and more questions coming in. We'll get back to them, I guess, in the comments.
Yeah, so what we'll do at the end of this is we'll get all of the questions. I know that Dan and Amanda will get us all the questions, and what we'll do is we'll put out one of those Q&A blog posts. So we'll get with Doug and Bob and Thomas and I, and we'll all sit together and answer all of these questions and make sure that those all get out into our blog post after this webinar. I want to thank you all for coming. It's been fantastic to be able to share the power of Nomad with you all. I want to give a special thanks to Bob for doing the presentation for us. Thanks very much, Bob. Thanks for Doug for being there to answer questions, and for Thomas to be there in the background helping answering questions. And I guess, Dan, the
survey, Tim, will pop up when people try to exit or when it's over. We stop the broadcast, so they should do that automatically. It's quick. It'll take 30 seconds or less, so it's very quick. But we'd appreciate your feedback. And thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks very much for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care, everyone.